Alright, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. The show is zero qualifications, zero credentials, bad hair, Bud Light shirt, and you know what, just keeps on chugging along, but it's football season, baby. We are in week 3? Yeah, it's week 3 of the college football season, week 2 of the NFL, which is ending off tonight as I'm recording this. So, let's just get through this. We got all sorts of shenanigans happening in college football this weekend, from the whole Deion Sanders thing that I think I missed on the last episode of last week, just because I was so locked in, dead focused on the NFL on that Thursday episode. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about upsets across the land on Saturday, from places you may have expected it and places you may not have expected it, but it was all certainly eye-opening. And I mean, we got all sorts of stuff going on, man. There are some teams that looked downright impressive, I would say, in places that you may not have anticipated coming into the season. So without further ado, let's just get into this after I get a drink of this ice-cold caffeinated beverage I see off to my left. That's just staring me down, giving me kissy faces and sexy eyes. So I'm just gonna take a sip of that real quick, and I'll be right back. My goodness, is that just a tasty, delicious concoction put together by a company who doesn't pay me and probably never will. It's good sauce though, man. It is good sauce. If you're looking for a cola, everyone knows the right answer. You don't have to say it out loud. You can just insert whatever answer makes you feel good, quite frankly. There is only one right answer, though, and we all know that. I'll just keep it moving from there, though. Week 3 of college football. When I pulled up the browser, it just popped me right under the Big 12 scoreboard, so we'll just start there. Why not? Just go straight down the list here. First and foremost, Texas did not look good early versus Wyoming. Didn't really look good the entire game, really, but ultimately, even with having what was the final stat line for Quinn Ewers? Something bad through the air, I'll tell you that much. If it'll ever pull up here, I plugged this Ethernet cable into the side of my laptop, thinking, man, this will make my excuse me. See that aftershock? Aftershock. That's what it means to be good sauce there for that caffeinated beverage. But I plugged this Ethernet cable into the side of my laptop, assuming that the internet will be faster, and what do you know? The page is still loading up. After all this time, I've vamped. All I wanted to know was what Quinn Ewers' stat line is. It's finally up now, and the best thing you can say about it, just rolling straight back into the content here because I'm done vamping. Best thing you can say about it is that he didn't turn the ball over, as far as I know. Nope, didn't turn the ball over. No fumbles, no interceptions. Got 2 touchdowns. Only 11 for 21, 131 yards though. Not great, but when Jonathan Brooks is going for 164, Xavier Worthy catching a touchdown, all that sort of stuff, it doesn't necessarily matter as much, and you are facing a team that you should generally beat. That's the main thing here, and it took care of business. 31-10, didn't look good, didn't look pretty, but there were a lot of games that didn't look pretty that ended a whole lot worse than this one. So let's just get to one right now. This was actually the best game of the day, and this is the one that I think coming in I thought might be the best game of the day. Kansas State, number 15, going on the road to Columbia, Missouri to face the Missouri Tigers. And I'll tell you what, Missouri and them had a game. I wasn't able to watch it because I was too busy staring at fruits and vegetables in a grocery store near you. But I followed this one throughout the whole 1 o'clock slate, or 1 o'clock, this isn't the NFL, the whole 12 o'clock slate, keeping tabs on it. And ultimately, it comes down to the very end. They're just slugging back and forth the whole time. No one's able to get an edge. All of a sudden, Missouri has a chance, fat kicker and all, staring down the barrel of a 60-yard field goal. And that guy, he comes through, absolutely buries it. Missouri takes home the win, upsets number 15 Kansas State. They are now 3-0 on the year, and I have not checked the latest rankings, but I would imagine they are knocking on that door of a ranking. That was probably wouldn't be able to hear him with that knock. So based on that perfectly rational portent, I'm just going to say they're not ranked. But you know what? Let's look that up right now. That seems like good fodder. AP top 25 is what I am looking for right here. Let's see if I was right or wrong. Are they ranked? Is Missouri an unranked team? This has got to be the most anticipated reveal of all time. We've got the top 10 there already. And it's something, another tab opened. I don't know what it's doing. It's taking me to a place that I should not be, but here we are looking for a top 25 ranking. I don't know why it's taking this much time to get there. Yahoo is a terrible service, and I don't know why the regulators made them put this on Google Chrome, but it is what it is. And no, Missouri is not ranked. My weak knock was exactly what they were doing at the door of the top 25. But they were the second leading vote getter behind Clemson to get into that 25 spot behind Florida. So, I mean, they're not far off. And if they win next week, they certainly will. I can't know off the top of my head what their game is next week. They might actually have a bye in week 4 this early in the season, but who's to say? I don't know. They looked very, very good in this game. They have, a corny coach to say the least. Eli Drinkwitz. He looks like a teacher that would be in your school teaching the history of something that you seriously don't want to learn about, like, I don't know, like textiles or something. I don't know, some weirdos like textiles. He seems like the type of weirdo to delve into the history of textiles in your history class when you want to be learning about cool stuff, slick stuff, neat stuff. Shout out Garth Brooks. But what he does do is coach the hell out of football. He's a damn good football coach. Has had a very good defense pretty much every year he's been at Missouri. The offense is coming along. Brady Cook threw for 356, 2 touchdowns. We don't have to revisit his head coach, Eli Drinkwitz, saying that he's just waiting for his daughters to turn 18 so he can hook them up with his starting quarterback. Not weird at all. We're not going to revisit it right now. Don't even think about thinking about that in your head. But he's been playing very well. The defense has always kind of been there. Obviously, Will Howard, very good quarterback on the other side. Didn't quite look like the defense was doing great, but they have one of the better defenses in the SEC. And the offense with Brady Cook, Luther Burden at wide receiver. He had a hell of a game in this one, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're starting to round into form, and what are they? Probably the second best team in their division right now, behind Georgia. I mean, there's not far off. I mean, Tennessee didn't look good. Florida, they looked really good against Tennessee, which we'll get to here in just a minute, but they have not looked good at all thus far this season. South Carolina, they've been bad all year. You need to shut up right now because I'm having quiet time, okay? You can't be playing ads when I'm trying to talk right now, okay? But I mean, who's the real contenders outside of Georgia in the East right now? There's really not anyone you can point to. Okay, Kentucky might be the second one behind there, but it's them and Missouri right now behind. I almost said Clemson, but not Clemson. Georgia in not the AFC. Locked on NFL right now. Sorry about that. The SEC East. And the West isn't looking that much better. We'll save the SEC talk here for just a minute because, boy, it was another rough week, successive rough weeks for the SEC. But we'll get to that in just a second. Kansas State, not a great way to break into Big 12 play here. And yes, Missouri is a quality team. You're on the road in a hostile environment. That Missouri fan base was just ready for a good game at home. Haven't really had a whole lot of those in the last several years, really, since the Blaine Gabbert years, really. You can go back that far even. It's a tough situation. Kansas State's got some room to make up, though, if they want to catch up to Texas. Still kind of bump up to that, Texas and Oklahoma, for that matter, if they still want to bump up to that Big 12 title contention once again. People forget they won last year. Do you forget? I bet you did. I'm here to remind you. Either way, let's keep it moving. Oklahoma just beat the living daylights out of Tulsa. I mean, Dylan Gabriel had 420, nice, 5 touchdowns, an interception, and that's pretty much all you need to know. They just beat the hell out of them. 66-17, was never really close, and it's looking like, same old Big 12 in the final year that they're in it. Texas and Oklahoma seem to be just a cut above everyone else in the conference right now, and you know what, you hate to say it, but should be interesting down the stretch, and that Oklahoma-Texas matchup is looming on the horizon here, but we'll keep it moving. Baylor beat Long Island 30-7. Didn't look good throughout this thing. Sawyer Robertson had 113 yards and 1 touchdown starting in place at Blake Shapen. That's not very good. They did have a 100-yard rusher, D. Pendergrass. What a last name, Pendergrass. He was their leading rusher with 111 yards, a touchdown to boot. The leading receiver in the game was Smith Mack, wide receiver for Long Island University, who had a single catch for 35 yards. So not an offensive explosion for either of these teams. Long Island University was just as bad as Baylor through 2 games. 0-2 now, 0-3. And I've already probably spent too much time on this, so we'll just keep it moving. Iowa State, here is one of your, I guess, upsets, but really just highlights how sad the state of affairs has gotten in Ames, Iowa right now. They lose to Ohio, 10-7. That's a friend from across the state's final score there. I'm talking about the regular Iowa State. That's kind of a score they're used to over there in Iowa City, but it goes not in their favor this time for Iowa State. Matt Campbell gets into a screaming match, almost a fight with a fan after the game who says he's on the hot seat. And that I'm here to tell you, that fan is probably right. I mean, the state of Iowa, or Iowa State football, rather. That was a confusing way to say all of that. But Iowa State football isn't exactly a spot that's used to winning per se. But if Matt Campbell can't pull it together throughout the course of the rest of this season, at least get like 4 or 5 wins, there's a real argument for him to not be there anymore. I think Matt Campbell is one of the best coaches that the program has ever had, if not the best coach. But man, it's not looking great over the last couple years. Really, since Brock Purdy left, they have not been able to pick up the pieces and get back to prominence here in the Big 12. So best of luck to you, Matt Campbell. It is not looking good right now. It is a tough time to be an Iowa State fan, I'll say that. UCF beat the hell out of Villanova. We don't have to get into that, but UCF is 3-0 now, so timing to keep an eye on. I think John Rice Plumlee, did he play in this game? I'm not sure he actually did. No, Timmy McClain, what a name. Timmy McClain started in place of John Rice Plumlee. I assume he's got an injury, a nick somewhere along the line, so hopefully he's back soon, because UCF, like I said in the preseason, probably my dark horse to come and win this whole conference. They start the season 3-0, and they will be entering Big 12 play either next week or the week after next. It's not far off, I'll tell you that right now. Cincinnati, another team to fall victim to the out of conference opponent. More action. Miami of Ohio beat Cincinnati 31-24 in overtime. Cincinnati, probably not a very good team this year. They started the year 2-0, but they haven't been playing a group of all-stars. And yes, Miami of Ohio is 2-1, but not all 2-1s are created equal. You have to understand. This is not a team they probably should have lost to, but seems like it's going to be a rough year for Cincinnati. That's really all I can say at this point. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully they come out and make the Big 12 competitive once again this year, but I feel like they're going to be a check mark on someone's schedule saying, yup, I expect a win here for most of the year once they enter Big 12 play. Maybe the saddest one of them all in this conference, South Alabama. I mean, they didn't just beat Oklahoma State. They whooped Oklahoma State 33-7. Oklahoma State rotated 3 different quarterbacks. They looked totally inept on offense. This was at home in Stillwater, Oklahoma, too, and they just got bodied on their own home field by South Alabama, who is, to their credit, a very, very good, I think they're either FCS or low-level FBS. I think they're FCS still, but they're a very, very good FCS team. They should not be beating Oklahoma State by, what's that, 26 points? That's 4 scores right there. That is an enormous margin of victory for an FCS opponent over an FBS opponent, and it kind of highlights the state of Oklahoma State football right now. It's not good. The Mad Mullet Mike Gundy has got his back against the wall, and he is not swinging some very good punches. It could be a rough year in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and granted they have one of the easier schedules in Big 12 play, but I don't think it really matters if you're just a bad team overall, and this is maybe a low point in the Mike Gundy tenure. And after the way that things have just not gone well for them in the transfer portal, the exodus of players over the last several years, that's another guy you might want to look at for being on the hot seat. I don't know what happens from here, but this does not feel like an Oklahoma State football team that's going to turn this around. It just feels like a team that is devoid of talent and stuck in a bygone age. Maybe that's just my bias creeping in with Mike Gundy, but I don't know. I don't know where it goes from here for Oklahoma State. I just don't see it going a whole lot of directions that fans would like it to go. Like it to go? Yep. Fans would like it to go. They wouldn't like it to go that way at all. So with that and that absolute flub of that last bit of words there, let's just keep it moving. Keep it moving. Tarleton State got the shit beaten out of them by Texas Tech, who finally gets a win. Maybe the best 0-2 team in the country, and probably a lot of their hopes and dreams for the season as far as Big 12 contention most likely dashed, I would say, but they can still pull this thing together, and it starts with just beating who you're supposed to beat. They beat the shit out of Tarleton. I don't need to dwell on that one too much. Arkansas, poor Arkansas. They lose to BYU at home, 38-7. Just a brutal loss. KJ Jefferson looked kind of pedestrian once again. You hate to see that. It kind of once again highlights the I don't want to say fall off, because they could be right back next year to what they've been for several years, but kind of the down year in the SEC, if you will. Arkansas, another team that was expecting to come out of the gates storming with that quarterback who was, self-proclaimed best quarterback in the SEC. The fans swear by that for sure, and it has not looked like that thus far this season. The defense still looks bad. The offense looks a little bit worse than last year, and they were like a 7-6 ball club last year, so it could very easily tilt in the other direction to where it's just 5-7, 4-8. Another, again, down year in the SEC, and Arkansas is a part of that. BYU gets the win, though. They are 3-0 entering Big 12 play. Pittsburgh loses to West Virginia in an absolute, just beauty of a game, 17-6. The leading passer was, get this, Phil Jerkovic with 81 passing yards and 3 interceptions. What a game. What a game. I'm sure this was fun for the fans all around the country. If you took the over, you cashed out and you were laughing all the way to the bank. If you were anyone else betting on this game, may God have mercy on your soul. This was not good. It was not good. And these are two teams that are just not very good at all. West Virginia is 2-1, but we'll have to see how they fare going into Big 12 play. Pittsburgh, Pat Narduzzi, not looking awesome after a year of pretty much overperformance last season, and the year before, they just had Kenny Pickett in there. I'm fairly certain. Yeah, they just had Kenny Pickett in there, and Jordan Addison 2 years ago, and now they're kind of, scraping the bottom of the barrel in the ACC. They could steal some wins in there and still probably get to 7-6, though, so I'm not going to come down too hard on Pat Narduzzi. He's still a good football coach. Who's to say? West Virginia gets a win there, so good for them. You know who didn't get a win? Houston. TCU just mopped the floor with them, 36-13 on the day. Chandler Morris throws for over 300, 2 touchdowns. Bailey, the running back for TCU, gets 126 yards on the ground, a touchdown as well. And Houston just, they're living up to preseason expectations. I'll say that. They are not doing well this year. They are 1-2, and that is entering Big 12 play, where it's only going to get harder from here. You saw how it happened with TCU, and I don't think TCU is even close to the cream of the crop in the conference this year. So Brace yourself, Houston fans. It's going to be a rough one. Dana Holgerson's going to pull all 7 of his last hairs off his head by the time this one is all said and done. The defense is bad. The offense isn't very good either. So seek God. That's the best advice I can give in that situation. Kansas squeaked one out against Nevada. 0-3 Nevada. Kansas only beats them by a touchdown, but a win is a win. Jalen Daniels throws for 298. Doesn't turn the ball over, but doesn't really have a whole lot of statistical impact on this game. No touchdowns, 21-27, so not a bad day at all. Just didn't quite turn that into touchdowns. I mean, 11 yards per attempt is, I mean, you're slinging the ball around if nothing else, and he didn't turn, well, he did get a fumble. I stand corrected. So no touchdowns, 1 fumble. Very, very good completion percentage, though. So, I mean, it's not the worst day in the world. You need better, though, to really blow out a team like Nevada. And I guess you shouldn't need better because your defense shouldn't be giving up 24 points. But Kansas looks like roughly the same exact team they were last year, where the defense can't stay in front of anybody, but the offense should outscore you on most occasions. They're 3-0 now, though, going into Big 12 play. Kansas, I mean, Lance Leipold, I have no idea how he stayed at Kansas this offseason. I would be shocked if he'd stayed at Kansas this coming offseason. He's just too damn good of a coach to be sequestered over there in Kansas. And I would say no offense to Kansas, but I don't know how you can't take offense to that. I'm sorry. It's just, look at the state of your program since 2007, I think it was, when y'all had Aqib Talib, almost made it to the national championship game. Ever since then, I mean, you paid a guy that's the size of a house for roughly half a century to not be there for most of that. And I couldn't tell you what else happened in the Kansas program because they've just been poo-poo stink garbage up until Lance Leipold got there. That's speaking a lot to the coach, and I don't see Lance Leipold staying around forever. I'll say that right now. But we'll see. That's a later problem. For now, Kansas is still a fun football team that you love to see succeed. You don't know how long it's going to last, but you love to see them succeed. There you have it for the Big 12. Let's talk about the ACC, shall we? We had a couple scares this past week. Miami Bethune-Cookman at Miami. See, Cookman's back. Cookman got exiled for last week whenever I was looking at it, I guess on my phone, and then all of a sudden, Miami brought Cookman back. Miami talked to Bethune, and they brought Cookman back. What a story. What a story of redemption and just, stick-to-itiveness by Cookman here on this one. But either way, they got beat by 41 points. 48-7 was the final score. Miami ran them off the field pretty much. But, hey, Bethune and Cookman are back together. That's the great part about this whole thing. Not going to spend any time on that, though, pretty much. Maryland ran Virginia off the field. Virginia's now 0-3. They look terrible. It's, unfortunate, but they look terrible. Maryland now 3-0. Talia Tonga had 340. The running back had 7.5 yards per carry. So everything's moving in a good direction for Maryland. Might be a sleeper in the conference. Oh wait, except for they have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in their division. So best possible outcome they can probably hope for is 9-3 on the season, which is a good season. It just probably will earn you 4th in the Big Ten East because, boy, those divisions are an absolute hosing of anyone who is not Penn State. Really, it hoses Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, quite frankly. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when they get rid of those divisions. I think it'll lead to probably a little bit more competitive conference championship games. I'll tell you that right now. But let us keep it moving down the line here. Florida State, this is the big one in the ACC this week. They just barely squeaked one out against Boston College, and they were lucky to do so, quite frankly, because, Boston College had them on the ropes for a lot of this game. Florida State had some big fumbles in this one, big turnovers that eventually ended up almost costing them the game. The thing was, Boston College, though, ultimately had like 16 penalties or something crazy like that pretty much did them in. They're a 1-2 football team. They're one of the worst teams in the ACC. But Florida State, number 3 team in the nation, they just barely squeaked out. They look fantastic when they're on their best, but you see a game like this, and a win is a win at the end of the day, so you can't fault them too much. But man, they didn't look like the dominant force that would necessarily be a shoo-in to win the national championship. And I'll leave that there for now, because I'm kind of feeding that into a larger point I'm going to make later on. Just a little teaser for you going forward. Ole Miss, number 17 team in the country, they're 3-0 now after beating Georgia Tech down pretty good, 48-23. Haynes King, did you know Haynes King was at Georgia Tech? I didn't, but there you go. He's at Georgia Tech now. Jackson Dart had, I'll just skipped over Haynes King. He had 307, 2 touchdowns. Not a bad day for Haynes King when it was all said and done. Probably had a fumble or two in there, just guessing based on the final score, but not a bad day. Not a bad day for old Hainesy there. Jackson Dart, 136 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. He was on his bullshit. That's Jackson Dart at his best. I'm not a huge believer in him as a passer, but he can run the hell out of the ball, and when he's able to run the ball like that, it makes his passing a whole lot easier. It's the exact same concept with Jalen Hurts. He was not a great passer coming into the league, but the ability he has with his legs makes the job passing that much easier. That's Jackson Dart at his best. If you want to win a bunch of games and win against Alabama this coming week, that is the type of Jackson Dart you need to see on a down-in, down-out basis. Ole Miss did not sweat with that one at all. I am not looking forward to the Egg Bowl this year. We will get to Mississippi State in a second. They're on my shit list right now. I'll tell you that right now. Right now. Let me say it 15 more times. Anyways, Minnesota, they go to North Carolina and get beat 31-13. Drake May, up and down game, but Minnesota is a pretty solid sort of defensive team. They'll get you in a rock fight if you're not careful. And North Carolina, it was that way for a little bit, but ultimately they pulled away down the stretch, end up winning by 3 scores. Drake May goes for over 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have those 2 interceptions, though. Like I said, Minnesota, tough defensive football team. But outside of that, really just North Carolina taking care of business at this point. I still don't know how good that defense is. We'll see when they face the likes of the Florida States, I would say the Clemsons, but Clemson's not that good. Hell, North Carolina might be the second best team in the ACC right now if Clemson continues to play badly. They did beat down some poor hapless team this week, but we'll just have to wait and see. By the way, worth mentioning just because he's got the funnest name, one of the funnest names in college football, but Ethan Kaliakmanis. What a name. He's the quarterback for Minnesota, and that's literally the only reason I brought him up, because he's got a fun name. Kaliakmanis. That's just good stuff right there. He went 11 of 29, though, for 133 yards. He wasn't very good at all. Drake May, just a shade over 70% completion percentage, though, with 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, over 10 yards per attempt, no fumbles. So not a terrible day. Not a great day by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly not the best day that Drake May has had as a North Carolina starting quarterback, but ultimately not a terrible day either against a tough defensive football team. He'll still probably be the second quarterback off the board, though. More foreshadowing to one of my takes later. Maybe not the second best quarterback in the country, or in my opinion, second best quarterback in the class. We'll have to wait and see on that take, though. Let's keep it moving, though. Duke, number 21 team in the country, take care of business against Northwestern, who inexplicably has a win. That's hilarious that Northwestern actually has a win. I think they beat Rutgers, but a win is a win when it's all said and done. They lose in this one, though, 38-14. Riley Leonard had 300 total yards, 97 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. Really more of a threat running than he is passing. But once again, if he's running like that, same thing that it is with Jackson Dart. It makes his job throwing the ball a lot easier when he's running like that. So they run away from it, run away from Northwestern. They're 3-0 now and looking like a legit threat for North Carolina, maybe Florida State if they catch them on a good day. anything is possible in the words of Kevin Garnett. But let's keep moving once again. Indiana loses to Louisville. I don't know why I said it in that order, but it is what it is, folks. Louisville goes into Indiana, gets the win. They're 3-0 now. It's 21-14, the final score. And listen, this is a schedule conundrum that we're going to be seeing over and over for Louisville. They have one of the weaker schedules in the entire conference. They're going to reel off some wins here if they're even like they even have an ounce of life in them, unlike Oklahoma State right now. We don't have to revisit all that, but if they have an ounce of life in this team, they should reel off a lot of wins, maybe be in it to possibly have a berth in the ACC championship when it's all said and done. Don't be fooled, though. They're not the greatest football team in the world, and I think the rankings tell you that right now at the very least. So, I mean, Jack Plummer, the starting quarterback there, was 13 for 23, 238, over 10 yards per attempt, I suppose, but only passing the ball 23 times. I'm not sure about their team as a whole. I mean, hey, Jamari Thrash, that's a hell of a name, hell of a game in this one, 159 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. I'm not going to go through the entire sort of stat line though for Louisville. Just trust me. If they face off against Florida State, if and when they face off against Florida State, there's a good chance they get run off the field. So you take that to the bank if you will. With that, though, we'll keep it moving. Wake Forest just barely escaped against Old Dominion. They're 3-0, albeit a shaky 3-0, but a 3-0 nonetheless. Barely escaped, though, 27-24. They get the win. I have no sort of opinion on Wake Forest, and I don't think I have time to state an opinion anyway, so we'll just keep it moving. NC State took care of business against VMI, 45-7, the final there. Brennan Armstrong didn't look terrible, so good for him, I suppose. Not anything noteworthy, though, so we'll just keep it moving. Virginia Tech is so bad, they lost by damn near 3 touchdowns to Rutgers. 35-16, the final in that one. The sad state of Virginia Tech football. I mean, I'd be shocked if they didn't just play Sarah McLachlan on the loudspeakers on campus all day, because that's how they have to feel. Basically in all sports, but football especially. It's a tough time to be a Hokies fan, folks. Pray for your neighbor who happens to be a Virginia Tech Hokies fan, but also kind of laugh at them too. That's a tough one to stomach right there. But we'll keep it moving. Rutgers gets the win. 3-0 Rutgers. How about that? Best team in New York City? Huh? People are asking. I don't know who, but they're people. Syracuse gets the win over Purdue 35-20. Garrett Schrader had, I don't know what the game was for Garrett Schrader. Did you know Hudson Card is the starting quarterback for the Purdue Boilermakers? I didn't until right now. There you go. He had 323 yards too. Garrett Schrader, it was a day. Well, I only looked at the throwing numbers. It was an okay day throwing. Check these rushing, or really just total numbers. Let me read off the stat line for Garrett Schrader for you. 14 for 28 for 184 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is there. And on the ground, 195 yards rushing, 7.8 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. And in college, you don't have to be good at passing if you can run the ball like that. That's all I'll have to say. This was a hell of a game for Garrett Schrader, and once again, I said it before last season, I'll say it again now. I'm happy to see Garrett Schrader land on his feet. Definitely not on that 4th and 12 where he got just helicoptered by Kansas State. We don't have to revisit that, even though I just did. But I'm happy to see him landing on his feet at a new program, playing some downright serviceable college football. He's a damn good runner. He's a solid quarterback, and I'd love to see him getting success. Former Bulldog, but still a Bulldog in my heart. Right here. He was a fun player to watch at Mississippi State. Didn't know what he was doing, but he had a fun way to play the game, and I'll just leave it there. Let's already talked about that. Oh yeah, Clemson beat Florida Atlantic, and they're such savages over there at Clemson. They just took Casey Thompson's leg and just sliced it right to his ACL. He's done for the year. And this was Casey Thompson's sixth year in college football. I think he started at Texas, kind of bounced around. I think he went to Nebraska last year or something. Ended up at FAU this season. Kind of a similar, J.T. Daniels, Keaton Slovis sort of story arc there. At least Keaton Slovis ended up with BYU, I suppose, but I digress on that front. But Casey Thompson, this brings up the question, only played in 3 games this year. Out for the season. Could we see a 7th year in college? Does he want to go for a second master's degree? That's what we need to be asking right now for Casey Thompson. I would love to see it because I just love seeing, he's going to have a walker by the time he's out of college football. I love seeing Chucky Keaton-ass motherfuckers in college football. A 7th year for Casey Thompson? Why not? Why not? Just give it to him, NCAA. We all know you're very reasonable when it comes to ruling players eligible and ineligible. We all know that. So I'd love to see it. NCAA, make it happen. Get Casey Thompson out here for another year. That's it for the ACC, though. What do we got next? Let's look at the Big Ten. Also, let's check on time. 35 minutes. We're blowing through this thing. We are blowing through this like a fat sack of cash, baby. Let's just keep it moving. First and foremost, though, need to get a sip of this caffeinated beverage. We're not going to cut away this time. We're just gonna show you the dirty details of the drink here. It's good stuff. That's good stuff. Yep, that's a burp as well. With that though, let's talk about the Big Ten. Already talked about Maryland, Virginia. Sucks to be in the Big Ten East when you're not those top 3 teams. They know that better than just about anybody. Michigan didn't look great once again. J.J. McCarthy had 3 interceptions, but they still beat Bowling Green by 4 scores, 31-6. So taking care of business, and just you got one more game without Jim Harbaugh, then we are back to business as usual. Blake Corum had a good one, though, 12 carries for 101, so take solace in that. Ohio State, finally looking like a dominant team that deserves to be in that playoff conversation. Kyle McCord, once again, finding out the secret sauce is just throwing to your best wide receiver in high school, that being Marvin Harrison Jr. They went to the same high school if you didn't know. Just, fun facts all around there. But he threw for 318, 3 touchdowns, 126 of that going to Marvin Harrison Jr., one of those touchdowns as well. So good day for Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison, Travion Henderson had 2 touchdowns on the ground. They beat the hell out of Western Kentucky 63-10. And they're starting to round into form here. That defense is looking good. The offense is rounding in. Ohio State could have another championship contender on their hands. I keep burping, and I might even sneeze right now. What's going on? What's going on, folks? Which of you out there are doing this? Stop it. Get some help. Penn State, wasn't pretty, but Bielema ball sucks you down into a zone where you're just not comfortable and you're not scoring a lot of points. They do end up winning by 3 scores when it's all said and done, though. 30-13, Penn State gets the win. Drew Aller doesn't throw any touchdowns, doesn't throw any interceptions, though, so you just escape from that one, get a nice comfortable win. Didn't look pretty, but a win is a win. They're 3-0, that being the number 7 team in the country this past week. Washington, and maybe give myself a pat on the back. We had one college football bet on the slate last week, and we won one college football bet. That was Washington -16, and they won 41-7. Michael Penix had 473 yards, 4 touchdowns. Rome Odunze had 8 receptions for 180 yards in this game. Washington has looked more dominant than just about any other team in the country. And this is a take I've been sitting on all day here thinking about. Michael Penix might be the second best quarterback in the country right now. I think Michael Penix falls slightly ahead of Drake May right now with what he is doing with the Washington Huskies. Every single game, I think he's thrown over 400 yards. They've absolutely lit up every team they've played. Yes, his receivers are really, really good, but he's a damn good quarterback. He's got a lightning rocket arm. He can throw the ball anywhere you want to on the football field, and he is just an absolute monster. And this team, with Michael Penix at the helm, what if this team is not only a playoff contender, but possibly the best team in the entire country. That's something I'm feeling right now. No one else in the entire country has had the dominant run to start the season that Washington has thus far. It's not something you're seeing all over the place. You're seeing Alabama struggle with a USF team. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. I mean, you're seeing Michigan struggle week in, week out. Georgia doesn't look like the team it's been over the last couple years, but Washington just sitting there chugging along. Looks like their defense has improved. The offense looks even better than it did last year with Michael Penix. Dylan Johnson's the starting running back now. Shout out to him. He didn't stay with Mississippi State, but I'm not broken up about that. You got to do what you got to do, man. It's not like we're good anyways, so might as well go to a championship contender. I think this Washington team might not only be the best team in the Pac-12, they might be pushing for best team in the country right now. Watch out for the Washington Huskies. I really like what they have going on at this moment in time. And the Pac-12 might be the best conference in the entire country right now. We'll put a pin in that and save that for the actual discussion of the conference itself when we get there. But Washington, maybe the best team in that entire group of really, really good teams. Let's keep it moving, though. Already talked about North Carolina. They get out of there with a win over Minnesota. Already talked about Duke beating Northwestern. Iowa, let me tell you right now, Iowa, I wasn't sure. I mean, they were favored by 26.5 coming in. I wasn't sure they could score 27 points in a game. What do? They come out of here and score 41, and I believe that is good enough to get them over that 25-point per game Mendoza line that Brian Ferentz needs to not get shit canned at the end of the year. So they beat Western Michigan 41-10. I didn't watch this game, but I would imagine the Iowa starters stayed in for probably entirely too long to make sure they get that benchmark there. You know, got to do what you got to do to keep your job if you're Brian Ferentz. I get it, but hey, look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, man. 3-0, not scoring 10 points every time they go out on the football field. There's still time, but they haven't done that thus far yet. And hey, they got another tight end prospect there for the NFL, Luke Leachy. Hey, well, the Hawkeyes, I said at the beginning of the year in that lightning round preview, they might be pushing for 10 wins, and they're starting out of the gate strong. They just beat the hell out of Western Michigan. What's not to like with them? But let's keep it moving from here. I already talked about Louisville, Indiana. Wisconsin beats Georgia Southern 35-14. Still not looking good on offense just yet, but you still got two absolute workhorses back there in Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen. Allen had 12 carries for 94 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one. He really ran all over Georgia Southern. But hey, a win is a win. Wisconsin gets one here, 35-14 at home. Keep it moving. Already talked about Rutgers, Virginia Tech. Nebraska beats Northern Illinois, and you know what? They're on the board. Gotta win. Good for you. Some guy with the last name Harburg came in at quarterback, and I don't know if Jeff Sims is injured or if he just stinks, but there you go. You got Heinrich Harburg. I don't want to besmirch the Harburg name. I assume they're a wonderful family with wonderful views on humans in general, but Heinrich Harburg sounds like an agent of the SS. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not trying to besmirch the man's character. I assume he's a great young man. I assume Heinrich Harburg is a great young man. His name sounds like one that you would find as part of the officers that were presiding over Auschwitz. I'm just going to say it. Just saying it, I'm leaving it there. I think Heinrich Harburg is a good guy, though. I think he's a good guy, and people should remember that. But also remember, that name sounds crazy. That's a fun name right there. But that is all to say. I don't have a whole lot to say about Nebraska. They win this game. Matt Rule, just let him work. Let him work. I don't think it's going to be pretty there for quite some time, but let him work for now. After that, already talked about Syracuse Purdue. So there you go. There's your Big Ten recap. What else do we got left? I think we've got the Pac-12 and the SEC. But let's talk about the Pac-12 first, shall we? Because the Pac-12, I mean, Washington beat Michigan State. We already knew that. Utah just chugging along 3-0. It hasn't looked pretty. But hey, that young guy, Nate Johnson, he's looking good. He is looking good right out of the gate. I mean, he's not the best quarterback in the world, but I mean, 13-21, 193 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt. got some good rushing numbers on the ground, 71 yards, another touchdown on the ground. They're just chugging along 31-7 over Weber State, and we'll forget about them at some point, and all of a sudden Cam Rising will be back, and they'll be right back in the conversation at the end of the year. They're number 12 on the team right now. Oregon beat Hawaii 55-10. Bo Nix had another 3 passing touchdowns. They're 3-0 now. They're number 13 in the country. Oregon State wins 26-9. Wasn't pretty, but a win is a win. They're 3-0 now. DJ Uyunglele had, not a great day, but a career-long touchdown pass of 75 yards in this one. They had an offensive lineman touchdown, which you love to see. You love to see that for sure. And we'll actually stop by for a little bit here because Colorado had themselves a game this week versus Colorado State. You may remember at the end of, or really the middle of last week, Jay Norvell saying on some radio show, I assume a local radio show there for Colorado State, like, hey guys, I come on here, I take my hat, I take my glasses off because that's what I do when I talk to adults, okay? My mama taught me that. And then, I thought for sure he just signed his own team's death warrant there. Colorado is minus 23.5, and I was not dumb enough to bet that. But at the end of the day, that would have been a juicy line if I had a little extra cash lying around and I was a fool. Luckily, I'm not a fool, though, because Colorado State came out and played themselves a game. Really took Colorado right down to the wire. 2 overtimes. Colorado wins 43-45 ultimately. But Colorado State had them on the ropes late. They were up by double digits in the fourth quarter. It took a 98-yard drive by Shedeur Sanders to get them across the finish line and into overtime here. Colorado was actually lucky to win this one in this game. They end up winning in the end, but hey, credit to Jay Norvell. There was a method to the madness. He got his team ready to play, and Colorado, especially on defense, did not look ready to go. The one major thing that happened here that's kind of getting headlines now is Colorado State safety. I forget his name already. I don't need to broadcast it here though. He took. Admittedly, it was a cheap shot. It was an asshole move. Asshole move by the safety. It was a clean hit. Well, kind of clean. It got a flag. It was obviously late hit. The ball was out of there, but he hits Travis Hunter squarely in the chest. He hit him late, so it was a flag, but hit him squarely in the chest. Took a cheap shot. There's no two ways about it. Sent Travis Hunter to the hospital. He'll be out for like 3 weeks for undisclosed injury stuff, but it was like in that chest area, so it's, lung or rib, probably one of those two if I had to guess. So, not good for the Colorado State safety. Big time asshole move. But him and his family were getting death threats after the game. And look, if you're sending, I don't know the guy's age, but somewhere between 18 and 24-year-old with the COVID years, if you're sending an 18 to 24-year-old death threats over a college football game, go ahead, take a look in the mirror, and seek God. Seek God. I'm not a God man myself, but if you're sending death threats to a kid, you should seek him. I hear he helps for these sorts of things. He can help have some introspection, if you will, if you need those sorts of things. And I think you certainly do. I think you certainly do if you're sending death threats to a kid. Don't be sending death threats to children. Don't do that. It doesn't help anybody. It probably doesn't make you feel good. It makes you look like a clown. And unless you're trying to be a clown, and first off, there are better jokes to play, so don't send death threats to kids. But that's the main message here. Don't be sending death threats to kids. With the actual football of it, though, maybe, just maybe, some people can admit at this point. Not me. I did not jump on the hype train that hard, but there were some people ranking Colorado, trying to put them in the top 10. Can we maybe slow down on this year one Colorado thing? I've maintained, and hand up, I was wrong coming into the year. I thought they'd be a 4-8 ball club, maybe a fun 4-8, but a 4-8 ball club. I no longer think that. I said initially 6-6 would be a barnstorming success. I think they could be anywhere from possibly 7-5, maybe 8-4 if they get lucky along the way. But let's all kind of, step back, temper the expectations. Their defense stinks. On both lines of scrimmage, they are simply not up to par with the competition, and they're going to have to work on that in the offseason. Deion Sanders has said as much in interviews. They need to recruit big boys, is like his exact words, pretty much. So they need him. They need more bodies on the offensive and defensive line. They were out there starting center too. It's worth mentioning. Outside of Travis Hunter, they don't have a great secondary. They got a really dynamic offense. If you stop that passing game, though, and you are asked to run, they don't necessarily have a key go-to guy on the ground necessarily. I said necessarily about 1 million times there, so we'll just keep it moving. But this is a team that is going to be very, very fun. I don't think they're going to defend worth a damn, though, and I think they're going to be an over machine. They're going to be fun. They're not going to be very good, I don't think. They're going to be okay. They're going to be solid, much better than I expected them to be in year one of Deion Sanders, but 7-5 would be an absolute smashing success. We all have to keep that in mind because the recalibration of expectations, as Josh Pate likes to put it, it's just around the corner. It's already happened for a lot of people. If Colorado starts reeling off a couple losses here, close losses, people are going to say, man, Colorado, what a disappointment down the stretch, just completely disregarding the fact that preseason, most of us were picking them to go 4-8, under 500, not even making a bowl game on the season. So again, let's temper expectations and just keep it moving, knowing what Colorado is. Well, we don't even truly know what Colorado is, but I got a pretty good idea this is going to be a fun team, if nothing else, and we should just take them for what they are. I'll leave it at that. Washington State, number 23 team in the country, getting back to my overarching point here. They won 64-21. Cam Ward looked really good once again, 327 and 4 touchdowns. Northern Colorado, so did we learn anything? No, but a big-time win there. They're 3-0 now. UCLA beat the hell out of North Carolina Central. They were yawning by halftime, and I think they put up 49 in the first half. It was like 49-0. They end up just coasting in down the stretch, 59-7, the final score. Dante Moore looks like everything as advertised thus far this season. I mean, only threw 12 passes, but 182 yards. That's 15 yards per attempt. 2 touchdowns. No interceptions. No turnovers on the day. Basically perfect. Didn't have a whole lot of impact on the ground, but you certainly didn't need him to in this one. He's looking like the next big time guy for Chip Kelly at UCLA. And then you're looking at, you're looking at the bottom of this conference, it doesn't get very pretty. But just starting with the overarching point here, though. Washington at number 8, Utah at number 12, Oregon at number 13, Oregon State at number 16, Colorado at 18, Washington State at 23. And then, of course, USC had a bye this week. They're the number 6 team in the country right now. The Pac-12 is the best conference in the nation. I think it is close, and that's another overarching point. There's no one great team in college football this season, but I think the Pac-12 might be the best conference in America right now. Every team has a quarterback. Every one of them could compete and win this conference. You got legitimate national title contenders at the top like USC and Washington right now. Oregon even is, they're not being given enough credit, quite frankly. I think they're a top 10 team, maybe even pushing top 5. They are really good, and they might end up being the best one of the bunch, but all of them have quarterbacks. None of them play defenses. It's the funnest conference in the entire nation right now, and I think it is the best. They have so many good teams in this conference. Any one of them can win. There's somehow even more contenders than there was last year, it feels like, and there were 5 teams that had 10 wins last year. There were legitimately like half the conference could have won this thing, and you would be like, okay, that makes sense just based on what they did throughout the course of the year. That's how competitive it was last year, and I think it's somehow even more competitive with a little bit more of the emergence of Washington State, the emergence of Colorado specifically even. It's just a really, really good conference top to bottom. It makes me even more sad that this is the last season we're going to have the Pac-12 conference as an entity pretty much, but it's... we should enjoy the swan song. I don't want to get too sad about it now, but we should enjoy this swan song while it's playing. We will have plenty of time to grieve when the music stops, but right now we are in the midst of an epic buildup, and it is going to be the climax. probably starting next week and going right to the end of the regular season, is going to be something magical. This Pac-12 conference it's legit this year, in its final year in existence pretty much. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch down the stretch. Let's talk about the bad teams in this conference though, shall we? I mean, California, they're 2-1. They beat Idaho 31-17. They took care of business. That's not what we're here to talk about here, folks. Sacramento State, they beat Stanford 30-23. Stanford finding new and creative ways to find a new low in the program. It's been a long, long way since the good years of David Shaw and Jim Harbaugh over there with Stanford, but it's going to be a long road forward too. So prepare yourselves. Fresno State, they actually shut out Arizona State 29-0, and if we're in the circle of trust, Arizona State plays USC next week. I thought, because I'm an idiot, that Jaden Rashada was still the starting quarterback for Arizona State, which I'm looking at that 62.5 point line of the over-under for a USC game. I'm like, I'm hammering that. And I bet it. And turns out Jaden Rashada is out for 4 to 6 weeks and might end up being red-shirted just because it's his freshman year and you can do that. I fucked up, guys. I fucked up. You don't have to fuck up. You know the full information picture there, but I'm sorry, guys. And I love how I said shout out Garth Brooks, and Garth Brooks is just sitting there staring at me on the sponsored headlines. They're listening to you, folks. They are listening to you. Don't you ever think they're not. Garth Brooks and whatever his wife's name, Miss Yearwood, Trish Yearwood, they are staring at me from the bottom of my screen right now, and it's creepy. It's creepy, you know. They got listening devices all over you. We don't got to get into that. Arizona did take care of business though. They're 2-1, 31-10. They win over UTEP. Jaden Delora had a good game, good Jaden Delora game. 3 touchdowns, 285 through the air, and that they take care of business. That's it for the Pac-12 though. Lest we not forget, this might be the best conference in the country. Let's talk about the best conference in the country several years, really. The SEC, and starting at the top, I mean, Georgia 24-14. They looked bad in the first half. They were down 14-3 at halftime. But lo and behold, they come out, hike up their pants, and go on a 21-0 run to end the game. End up winning fairly comfortably 24-14 over South Carolina. South Carolina did make it a rock fight, but not enough of a rock fight to win. I just don't think South Carolina is very good this year. Carson Beck didn't necessarily have a shining day, though. 269 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions, but not a whole lot of statistical impact on the game. It was really just Georgia's talent rising above all. Real questions about whether Carson Beck is ready for the spotlight. They assume probably that he's eventually going to become that guy, but for right now, what is the stretch run of this season look like? They're still probably the best team in the SEC, but the SEC, it just highlights it's a down year across the board right now, and no greater illustration of that than Alabama. I mean, they didn't squeak by. They end up winning 17-13, but that's just a ugly, disgusting Alabama win over South Florida, a South Florida team who is not very good. The leading passer in this game was the quarterback for USF, Brown. He had 87 yards and 1 interception. Jalen Milroe was benched for the duration of this one. There was some speculation that might be the case, that they might get a look at Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson in this one. That is exactly what happened. And it looked like the team was not a huge fan of that. I think the locker room probably really likes Jalen Milroe, and they didn't necessarily want to play for either Tyler Buckner or Ty Simpson, at the very least in this season right now. It was bad. It was really bad. Tyler Buckner looked terrible. He was absolutely awful. Ty Simpson didn't look awesome either. He looked better than Ty Buckner though, which, I mean, hard to look a whole lot worse. This Bama team is just disgusting. Not as disgusting as this Mississippi State team that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, but they are not very good. The offensive line is not as good as advertised. The defense is inconsistent. The offensive weapons are just not there right now. The backfield is One of the weaker backfields that Saban has ever had. The receiving core, same exact thing. The quarterback situation, just across the board on offense, they are not nearly as good as they have been in years past. And I don't even think I certainly don't think they're on the level of Georgia. They might not even be the best team in the SEC West right now with what LSU did against Mississippi State. But just a year that people are going to be asking whether Babin, yep. Is Babin washed? Saban is not washed. He's not washed at all, I don't think. But I think he made a couple of less than ideal coordinator hires. Tommy Rees looks like not very good at all so far in his tenure with Alabama. Kevin Steele, the Ole Miss staff seems to think that Kevin Steele's not even calling plays. There's another defensive assistant for Alabama who I think has been there for a little bit, but Saban is saying that guy was calling plays, not Kevin Steele, which 3 games into the season, if you've already basically made a defensive play caller change, that's not great. That's not great, but Kevin Steele might have known that was going to be the case coming in. I don't know, but it's just Alabama is in a lot more disarray than we've seen over the last several years. Really, since Jalen Hurts came in, really, we have not seen this sort of stability at all, really ever for Alabama in that stretch. It's going to be interesting. They had a really good recruiting class come in. They had a really good recruiting class before that, too. They always have a good recruiting class, but we'll have to see what happens next year and have a little bit more serious conversation then. But right now, this Alabama team does not look like it is up to snuff to compete at the end of the year. Another team that I don't think is very up to snuff to compete at the end of the year, Tennessee. They lose by 2 touchdowns, 16-29 on the road in Gainesville in Florida. Florida gets the win here after the way they started the season, who would have thunk it coming into this week that Florida would come out here and just beat the hell out of Tennessee. I thought Florida would keep it close at the very least, but I figured Tennessee would pull one out at the end here. Really, outside of the very first drive of the game where Joe Milton just went right down the field, this Tennessee offense looked terrible. That was the last touchdown they scored in the very first possession they had in the game. After that, it was just struggle after struggle after struggle. Joe Milton didn't end up with terrible numbers, but he did not get the job done. Trevor Etienne just ran all over this Tennessee defense, 171 yards on the ground for Etienne. Graham Mertz had an efficient day. I think he was, 19 for 24 on the day. I mean, a 166, one touchdown passing, 1 touchdown rushing, too. So just kind of ho-hum sort of day, but ended up just pulling away when it was all said and done. And if Trevor Etienne is playing like that and the defense is playing like they did against Tennessee in this game after that first drive, I mean, all you really need from Graham Mertz is high-end game manager, kind of what I thought I was getting from Will Rogers this season. We'll get to that in just a second, but that is exactly what Graham Mertz did for Florida. And if they can do this in every game this year, sure, they could turn this around. They could save Billy Napier's job for another season. There's no question about it in my mind. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I just think Florida went up against one of their biggest rivals, and they played like it was a rivalry game. That's kind of what happens in these sorts of situations a lot of times. You're probably going to see it again with Georgia. I think that Georgia-Florida game might turn into a rock fight. Probably going to be a dandy at the end of the season too. So that's something you just got to keep in mind with this. I don't know if Florida is that good, but they certainly played like it this past weekend, and they got a win that they desperately needed after the way the season has started thus far. Tennessee, the defense didn't look very good. The offense under Joe Milton has not lived up to advertisement. Those receivers are simply not good enough. Joe Milton has not been good enough at times either. He looks better than he did with Michigan, but he's not what Hendon Hooker was last year or the season before that even. It just looks like the Tennessee team that might be falling down a little bit back to the pack. And again, like I said early on in the off season here, they do have Nico Iamaleava just sitting there, the number 1 quarterback, number 1 player overall in this past recruiting class, better player rated wise than Dante Moore, who is currently starting at UCLA right now and playing very well. Keep that in mind. So they're not going to be down for very long, but Feels like this year, just like the rest of the SEC, just a little bit down from where they were the year before. LSU, though, seems to be rounding back into form. They beat the living shit out of Mississippi State. This was just depressing to keep track of, boys and girls. 41-14, the final score. It didn't even really feel that close. LSU could have put 60 on us if they truly wanted to. I mean, Jaden Daniels looked like the second coming of Patrick Mahomes in this game. He was 30 of 34, 361, 2 touchdowns passing, 2 touchdowns rushing. Malik Neighbors had damn near 200 yards in the first half. He had over 200 yards for the game, 13 receptions, 239, 2 touchdowns on the day. Brian Thomas had 7 receptions. They did whatever they wanted to us. I mean, they had 3 rushing touchdowns. They had 2 passing touchdowns. They just walked up and down the field, up and down, up and down, up and down. And meanwhile, Mississippi State, Will Rogers looked absolutely hapless back there, short-armed basically everything. 11 of 28, 103 yards, 3.7 yards per attempt. Mike Wright, we'll talk about that whole situation in just a second. He had the 1 passing touchdown on the day, so you love to see that, I suppose. Tulu Griffin had a rushing touchdown, so you love to see that. But, I mean, Woody Marks had 9.4 yards per carry. He had a 52-yard run at one point in this game, so he's still spectacular. You still love to see that. But none of the receivers could really get open on a consistent basis. We didn't have a quarterback that could get them there on a consistent basis. The offensive game plan looked shoddy once again. It wasn't, I mean, they just kept trying to run the ball, and it just kept on not working for the most part. Outside of that 52-yard run, it just was not working for Mississippi State on offense. And defensively, we could not even stay in front of LSU. This is, in the grand scheme of things, short time being a Mississippi State fan. I guess it's been, I guess like 8 years at this point since I first went to Mississippi State back in 2015. This is one of the lower feelings I've had as a Mississippi State fan. It feels like we might have made a mistake in hiring, both for the new head coach, for the offensive coordinator. I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like a dire and depressing situation right now. The coaching staff has not been good at all. I mean, Kevin Barbay, he's been more conservative than I'd even imagined coming into this season. I don't know. I don't know how much of that is Zach Arnett doing the defensive coordinator thing and just making him kind of take hand off or foot off the gas or something like that. I don't know if it's anything like that at all, but man, this is not what I expected coming out of the App State thing. I thought for sure they would have a little bit more passing, a little bit more balanced, less skewed to the running game, and really, I alluded to it earlier while recapping a different game that I can't remember right now, but I thought Will Rogers would be like a high-end game manager sort of player in this season. Not necessarily, the entire offense like he'd been in past seasons, but just, a good player, a guy that you can kind of count on to, get some good play action shots down the field. One, haven't seen a whole lot of those play action shots in this Kevin Barbay offense, but two, I mean, Will Rogers just straight up has not looked good. He's not looked good against quality competition. He's not looked good against Arizona even. He's just not looked good at all this season. It's just been bad. And especially in this game, I mean, you saw from Will Rogers the reasons why I was hoping he would transfer after last season. He's not an athlete. He can't move. He's an absolute statue back there, and it's one thing to be an absolute statue, but you got a rocket arm. He doesn't even have the rocket arm. I'm not sure he's really progressed substantially since his freshman year, because he already came in like a very polished decision maker passing the ball. He just has never had the physical tools to put you over the top. And I don't say this lightly right now, because Will Rogers has been a really good player at Mississippi State for really his entire career since he was there. Stepped in as like a true freshman to quarterback this team when there was some upheaval in the beginning of Mike Leach's tenure as Mississippi State head coach. I love Will Rogers and what he's done for the university. But Mike Wright needs to start at quarterback for Mississippi State right now. Straight up, he needs to start. For this Barbay offense to work, and I don't necessarily love what I've been seeing out of it thus far, but for this Kevin Barbay-led offense to work, you need to have a mobile quarterback. Chase Bryce wasn't necessarily going to wow you with athleticism at App State last year, but he could bring a running element that gives you a little bit more multiple looks. And if you're thinking back to there was a 4th and 2 versus Arizona where Will Rogers was running a quote unquote read option with Woody Marks. If Mike Wright is in that position, you can't just assume that Mike Wright is going to hand that off every time. You have to actually respect the possibility of a QB run. Against Arizona, the defensive end didn't respect it at all. I mean, Will Rogers didn't actually make a read, I don't think. He just stared at the defensive end, watched the defensive end crash towards the middle, and then just handed it off to Woody Marks anyways for a loss on the play. If Mike Wright is in that position, he's probably pulling that and running for a first down, maybe even a touchdown with how hard that defensive end crashed. That's the type of stuff that you're never going to get with Will Rogers that you can get with Mike Wright. I don't know what the passing looks like. I don't know what the offense would look like from a passing perspective with Mike Wright in there. But right now, Will Rogers is just not a player that fits in this offense at all. I think if we want to progress forward and maybe have a little bit more explosive aspect, not get absolutely embarrassed in SEC play, I think Mike Wright needs to be the starter at Mississippi State right now. And hopefully, I mean, Will Rogers still has a year of eligibility too. He could come back and make things very uncomfortable or enter the transfer portal or something like that. I'm hoping that they make a change at some point here because this could be a painful year for Mississippi State faithful. I hope it's not. I simply hope it is not, and hope we see a change there at some point. Not optimistic, but we'll see what happens. We got a long road to hoe. I'll say that right now. Already talked about Missouri, Kansas State. Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, already hit on that. Texas A&M blew UL Monroe out of the water, so good for them. Flowers to you, not UL Monroe. You got killed. Texas A&M, flowers to you for doing your job there. Excuse me, I had to get a burp out there real quick. Auburn beat Samford like they were supposed to, 45-13. They're 3-0 now, entering conference play. Have to see what they look like against SEC competition, but a win is a win. They haven't looked awesome, but 3-0 is 3-0. We'll have to see what they look like against big-time competition. Vanderbilt, I still don't think they're better than Mississippi State, but I don't think it's quite as large of a gap as I had anticipated it being. Still worse than us. They lose to UNLV 40-37, and that's just how bad Vanderbilt is, folks. I mean, they get a good performance from their quarterback, score 37 points, but what do you know? UNLV still beats you. Never forget the SEC media. They're dumb. They're dumb sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. BYU beat Arkansas. We talked about that. Shout out to BYU product Puka Nacua, a.k.a. Pookie Nakuki. One of my favorite names in this past draft. Somehow slipped to the 5th round. Has been absolutely killing it for the Rams. We'll talk about that on Thursday, though. He's going to have his own time to shine on that episode, I can assure you. And Kentucky beat Akron. 3-0 now. They're 35, or they're not 35-3. They beat them 35-3. They're 3-0 now on the season. Devin Leary had a good game, and we still don't necessarily know what this team is, but solid defense. I think better quarterback than last year, frankly, over what they got from Will Levis. Probably a better offensive line because it's hard to get a worse offensive line than they had last year. And hey, Kentucky might be another team that makes some waves in the SEC. Has talked about them being right neck and neck with Missouri right now. Hey, if Florida continues to play like they did against Tennessee, they might be right in that conversation too. Do I think they will? No, but they could. I mean, you saw the max of their potential against Tennessee, and that was good enough to beat them by 2 touchdowns. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. And with that, that's pretty much it for this week. I think Notre Dame might have won a a pretty handy game there as well. Yeah, they beat Central Michigan 41-17. Sam Hartman is once again looking like a Heisman contender. Audric Estime, all he did was rush for 176 and a touchdown. Ho-hum, that was on 20 carries too. So they are just hurtling towards that matchup next week with Ohio State. And with that, let's just crack this thing open, shall we? Let's go down the slate of next week. Week 4, week 3 in the books now. Week 4. And we thought week 3 was going to be a down week. Well, we had, all those close games we didn't think were going to be close. Big-time matchups, or maybe not big-time matches, but not so big-time matchups that ended up turning into big-time matchups. Upsets across the board. It was chaos last week. Much better than we thought. And this week, boy, is this looking like a delicious slate off the top here. First and foremost, Michigan's going to beat the hell out of Rutgers. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that. -24. I might take Michigan on that, except for they've looked bad against basically everyone, so I'll probably stay away. Florida State, they are going to Clemson. They are only favored by 2 points right now. We'll get a nice live and up close look to see if Clemson has improved at all from that week 1 showing against Duke. I might be inclined to take FSU in that one, and it might be a bet. I'll check back in with you on Thursday with that one, but that's a big time matchup. The biggest big time matchup left for Florida State or Clemson, I think. It was billed as a dandy coming into the year, still might be a dandy. I think Florida is a pretty good favorite, though, when it's all said and done. Oklahoma is playing against Cincinnati. They should beat the hell out of them. Colorado, it made me stutter there. That's how excited I was for it. We are getting into Pac-12 play here, folks. We were dipping right in. Colorado traveling to Oregon. Over-under set at 71. I'm staying away from it. I don't like lines in the 70s, but I would not be shocked at all if they smash that over. This could be a shootout. This could be classic Pac-12 after dark sort of stuff. I mean, kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. actually, so you can all watch this live and in living color. But, man, Pac-12 play is going to be good. You got Shedeur Sanders versus Bo Nix. You got absolutely no defense for Colorado versus an okay defense for Oregon. Oregon's favored by 21 in this game. I'm going to stay away from this line because that's a stinky line right there. But I think Colorado is probably going to keep it closer than 21, I would say. I think the Vegas odds makers got no respect for Colorado versus Oregon right now. All the respect for Oregon, though, quite frankly. So good for them. That should be an absolute dandy of a game, though. Man, if College Game Day would have just waited to blow their load, they could have had Oregon, Colorado instead of Colorado State. Now, it ended up working out. It ended up being a great game that night. But they could have had a much more marquee match if they just waited a little bit longer. And, hey, maybe Colorado turns into a pumpkin, but just wait. Just wait. We'll see how it all plays out here. That should be a dandy of a matchup. Another dandy of a matchup, UCLA traveling to Utah, Salt Lake City to take on the Utes. Still don't know what Cam Rising's status is. Is he going to play in this game? We're just going to assume not until proven wrong. This will be the first big test for UCLA. Obviously, Utah started out the season with Florida, then they went on the road to Baylor. I think they've kind of proven they're, same old kind of Utah team as they've been the last several years. But UCLA, what are they going to look like against some big-time competition? Dante Moore, this is going to be a big type of litmus test game for him. What does Utah State's redshirt freshman quarterback, Nate Johnson, if he does end up starting and not Cam Rising, what does he look like against a UCLA team? Does he come out and light the world on fire? We'll just have to wait and see on that. This is another dandy of a matchup in the Pac-12. Once again, I said it before, I'll say it again, might be the best team in the nation not the best team, the best conference in the nation right now. They're looking really good out there out west, and this is going to be a fun matchup. I'm 3:30 once again, so damn it, I'll be at work, but hopefully I'll be able to see it after halftime when I can sit down and enjoy it after work, going to hell, if you will. Marquee matchup in the SEC this week. Ole Miss battling Alabama in Tuscaloosa. This is going to have some big-time implications for the SEC West race. Alabama's favored by a touchdown right now. Ole Miss, who knows what they are. Jackson Dart has looked solid this season. Alabama's offense has not looked solid this season. That's putting it politely. This could be a big-time upset spot for Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's been buttering up Nick Saban on Twitter, as he always does going into this game, but I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I could also see Alabama winning by 3 touchdowns and just reeling one off in this game. I could see Ole Miss winning. I could see basically anything happening. It's a fun year in the SEC. They may not have a playoff team when it's all said and done if Georgia slips up along the way, but they could still be an interesting conference just by the virtue of chaos throughout the course of the season, even if they're not that good. It's shaping up to be a lot like the 2007 season where 6 straight weeks of a number 1 team losing, chaos abound all across the land. Ended up with a 2-loss LSU team winning the title in the BCS era, where only 2 teams made the national title game. There's no playoff; it's just a 1 and 2. LSU ends up winning that with a 2-loss record. That should tell you how wild the year was, because everyone lost and no one came out unscathed at the end of the year. That's just fun times. We're shaping up a lot like that this season, and it could really start unraveling in week 4. Duke is traveling to UConn. That's good for them. They should win by a lot. Miami is traveling to Temple. They should win by a lot there. Tennessee favored by 20.5 versus UTSA. I don't know how good UTSA is this year. I mean, they're 1 and 2. They lost to Houston to start the year, I think. Tennessee's favored by 20.5. They could get that. They should be pissed off after what they did last week versus Florida. We'll have to see how they follow it up, if you will. Arkansas is traveling to LSU. LSU's favored by 18. That seems like a pretty appropriate line there, so I'm probably stay away from that as well. LSU, we'll have to see if they can continue to build on that momentum they had last week. Really, after that Florida State game, they've looked pretty solid. I mean, you got to wait for Jaden Daniels. Is it going to be a good Jaden Daniels game? Is it going to be a bad Jaden Daniels game? It's hard to tell from week to week, but Malik Neighbors is a damn good receiver. Jaden Daniels, at the height of his powers, is a damn good quarterback. LSU could ultimately be the best team in the SEC West right now. Could end up representing the Western Division in the conference championship game, but there is way too much time until the end of the season to determine such a thing like that. You can get a ticket to this game for $53. That's a good bargain right there. A rivalry game at Baton Rouge, no less. Tiger Stadium, the Death Valley, and it is. If you've never been to Death Valley, man, there's really. Clemson can talk all they want about their Death Valley. There's really only one Death Valley, folks, and that is in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. If you've never been there, it is, oh man, I've never even been there really for a marquee matchup. It is a hostile environment in the most beautiful way possible. It's kind of a dump, but a beautiful dump. It is the most Louisiana thing of all time. That's the best way I can put it. You don't understand the atmosphere until you're there. The people love to party. They know how to party, and they bring that energy into the stadium. It's a hostile environment. I love it so much. The third ranked matchup in the Pac-12 this week, Oregon State, number 14 team in the nation, traveling to Pullman to take on Washington State, the number 21 ranked team in the nation. 2 undefeated teams, like I think all of the other matchups are this weekend in the Pac-12 that are ranked. This is another really good one that Oregon State, I think, ends up coming out on top, but Cam Ward has yet to throw an interception this year. DJ Uyunglele has looked much better at Oregon State than he did with Clemson. Neither of these teams really play a whole lot of defense, so over-under is at 56. I may, in fact, take the over. I got to peruse some bets before we come back on Thursday, but there is looking like a juicy board for overs. I will say that right now. I might stay away from UCLA, Utah, but Oregon State, Washington State, that is just That smells like good stuff right there. That smells like good stuff. Florida's playing Charlotte. Don't want to talk about that. Georgia's favored by 41.5 versus UAB, so who cares? Texas is traveling to Baylor, and the way they played against Wyoming could be a tough spot for them, but I would expect Texas to come in and take care of business. They're favored by 15.5 for a reason, and I think they come out, eventually pull away and get this thing done. The marquee matchup of the week, Ohio State, number 6 team in the country right now, is traveling to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. This is the start of an absolute just murderer's row of opponents for Notre Dame. I mean, they face off against Ohio State. They face Clemson. There's probably another one in there that I'm just totally forgetting about. But, I mean, they face basically, I mean, they face USC in that mix as well. Just a gauntlet of a schedule for Notre Dame that they've put together this year. And man, this is going to be interesting. This will be a huge test for both teams, quite frankly. Like, what does Ohio State look like against big-time competition? Does Notre Dame continue to look dominant as they have throughout the course of this season thus far? I mean, Sam Hartman's the best quarterback that they've had in there for quite some time. Maybe the biggest pro prospect they've had in there in quite some time. A one-year rental, but a spectacular one-year rental at that. Audric Estime has looked unstoppable throughout the course of the year. What is he going to look like? I mean, behind that vaunted offensive line, but that vaunted offensive line going against a really good defensive line for Ohio State. Kyle McCord, what does he look like against a solid Notre Dame defense? Marvin Harrison, we know what Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do. He's the best. He's the best receiver in the country. He might be top 3 pick when it's all said and done. Maybe even like a top 2 pick. That's just how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is. We know what he's going to do, but what does Kyle McCord look like? What does that vaunted backfield of Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson look like for Ohio State as well? This is going to be a dandy of a matchup. It's at 7:30. Of course, it's a Notre Dame game, so it's on NBC. My ass will be glued to my couch watching this one. This should be an absolute dandy. Game day is there. Every college football show known to man is there, I'm pretty sure, outside of Big Noon Kickoff, because I think they always do a game at noon, but I digress on that front. Ohio State, Notre Dame, it should be a dandy. I hope it's a good one. OSU is actually favored by 3.5 on the road. That should tell you what Vegas thinks about Ohio State right now. But that should be a fun one. College football is fully back now, folks. Talking about the Big Ten now. Once again, Ohio State was in the last one, so still kind of talking about the Big Ten. Number 24, Iowa is traveling to Penn State. Penn State's favored by 14.5 right now. Again, big-time litmus test game. Another, similar to the Illinois game, just a little bit souped-up version of Illinois, and you get Iowa. At least Penn State's got them at home this time, so it should be a little bit more manageable, but Iowa State's going to try and make this thing a rock fight. They're not going to score a whole lot, but they're going to try and keep you off the board as well and control clock. Going to be a big test for Drew Aller. Does he look a little bit better than he did last week versus Illinois? Ultimately, I think Penn State probably wins this thing, but man, that's going to be a big-time test for Penn State. I mean, you got to win games like this, get through them so you can get to the big boys, the Michigans, and the Ohio State games. You got to at least split those two this season. Otherwise, it's going to be just another year with Penn State just on the fringe, but not quite in that conversation for not just conference championship, but overall championship playoff odds at the end of the year. It starts now with beating Iowa like you were supposed to. That should be another fun one. It's at 7:30 as well on CBS though, so sorry, I might flip back and forth with Ohio State Notre Dame, but I'm going to be locked on Ohio State Notre Dame, quite frankly. North Carolina is playing Pitt. That should be, North Carolina should win that one fairly with fair ease, you could say. It's at Pitt, so there's always a chance of randomness there. But they just lost by 11 points and look bad against their big out-of-conference rival. Old Big East matchup there with West Virginia last week. So I would assume North Carolina comes out here and takes care of business like they're supposed to. Not really a whole lot to think about there for me. USC versus Arizona State. Jaden Rashada famously not playing in this game. Caleb Williams is playing in this game though, so hopefully I didn't lose money by betting over 62.5 in this one. Just Slap the dunce cap right on my head. That's how I feel right now. It is what it is, folks. Cal is taking on Washington. Washington's favored by 21, and I may move on that bet. I love Washington. I love what they're doing right now. It's not quite the dire situation that Michigan State was facing last week. Which, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, Michigan State, they did not technically fire Mel Tucker. They just suspended him indefinitely, and now today it came out that the day I'm recording this on Monday, it came out that they are looking at, or they're starting the process of firing Mel Tucker for cause, which is kind of what I anticipated would happen coming into this thing. But right now, still technically the head coach of the Michigan State Spartans. So not quite that bad of a situation, but California going into Seattle, into the Washington. I feel like Washington's going to win this one by a fairly decent margin. My minus 21, I might jump on that. So that's a juicy little line right there. Juicy little line. With that, though, I know Mississippi State's playing South Carolina. Life is pain and existence is suffering, though, so we can just breeze right past that one. Either way, that's pretty much it. That's the board for next week. I will get to you with some bets at the end of this week. 3-1 week. This past week, we are looking good, looking real good on the bets. I think we're back to 500 with that. I got to check on my phone where I keep the gambling record at, but we're chugging right along in this new era of picks, and I'm hoping to keep on making some people money. Let's keep this sort of this momentum going in this upcoming season. But with that, yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I really enjoyed this episode. This has been Unqualified Analysis. If you enjoyed, we do this thing twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, college football, NFL, respectively. So you can tune in for that. That's all football season. Outside of that, you can subscribe wherever you're listening to this, be it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You take your pick. Just go ahead and subscribe to one or all of those things. Follow me on Twitter at Caleb Verzak. Links down in the description, so you have to spell my fucked up Eastern Bloc name. I did it for you. I did the hard work. All you got to do is click a link and click follow, and you are right there at the finish line. No need to thank me. I've done it myself. I patted myself on the back by doing that. Outside of that, if you want to contact the show, shoot me a DM on Twitter, probably the best way to do it. Or you can send me an email at unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. That'd be cool if I got one of those, I suppose. We'll see what happens there. I think that's pretty much it for me, though. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I got no clue what I'm talking about. One thing I did learn this week, though, is apparently the Soviets had more deaths, not just raw casualties, just deaths by their own service personnel in both the battle for Leningrad, the siege of Leningrad rather, and Stalingrad. In those single battles, they had pretty much double the amount of casualties that all the other Allied combatants had in the rest of the war. They had over a million deaths of their service members in both the battles of Stalingrad and Leningrad, and I believe the U.S. lost just over not the U.S., but like the Allied powers in general just lost just over 500,000 combined outside of the Soviet Union. So that's when they say British intelligence, American steel, Soviet blood won World War II. You can take that to the bank. That's pretty much exactly what happened. But yeah. Solid hour and a half podcast. I'm going to go edit this thing probably while watching some football. So I will see y'all on the morrow, kids. Deuces.